She's not just a story, she's real. And that night I stood before her grave, and broke the one rule. Within 3 days my friend lost her mind, and I lost control of my own body. The air in New Orleans was thick with a strange, intoxicating energy as I arrived in the city, my notebook clutched tightly, ready to unravel the mysteries of voodoo for my thesis. The French Quarter pulsed with life. Street musicians played syncopated rhythms, their drums echoing like heartbeats through the cobblestone alleys. The scent of beignet mingled with the faint burn of incense from spiritual shops tucked into every corner. Locals spoke of Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen, in hushed tones, as if her name alone could summon something ancient and untamed. Her legacy was woven into the city's fabric, a blend of reverence and fear that I found both fascinating and slightly unnerving. My research took me deep into the city's history, from dusty library archives to conversations with elderly shopkeepers who claimed to know secrets passed down through generations. They described Marie as more than a historical figure, a priestess, a healer, and, some whispered, a force that still lingered. "She's not gone," an old woman told me, her eyes sharp as she polished a crystal ball. "Her spirit walks these streets, and she don't take kindly to outsiders meddling." I smiled politely, dismissing it as folklore meant to scare tourists. My academic mind craved evidence, not superstition. Yet the warnings were consistent. Every person I spoke to, from bartenders to street vendors, repeated the same refrain: "Don't mess with Marie's spirit. And never, ever go to her tomb at night." The St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, where she was buried, was described as a place where the veil between worlds was thin. I scribbled these warnings in my notes, intrigued by their passion but unconvinced. After all, I was here to study voodoo's cultural impact, not to believe in ghosts. Still, the city's atmosphere began to seep into me, making my skin prickle at odd moments. My evenings were spent wandering the quarter, absorbing its chaos and charm. The neon signs of Bourbon Street glowed against the twilight, and the sound of jazz spilled from open doorways. But there were quieter corners too, dark alleys where shadows seemed to move independently of their sources. One night, I overheard a group of locals discussing a ritual gone wrong, someone who disrespected Marie, and paid a price. Their voices dropped low, as if afraid she might hear. I laughed it off, but a seed of curiosity took root. That curiosity grew into a reckless idea. What better way to understand voodoo than to experience it firsthand? I'd read about the rituals performed at Marie's tomb, offerings of flowers, liquor, or coins, and the tradition of marking 3 X's on her grave to ask for a blessing. It sounded like a harmless cultural practice, a perfect anecdote for my thesis. I mentioned the idea to my friends Claire and Marcus, who were tagging along for the trip. Claire, a skeptic like me, thought it sounded thrilling. Marcus was less sure but agreed to come for the adventure. We planned our visit for the following night, gathering supplies, red chalk, white flowers, and a small bottle of rum as an offering. The plan was simple: visit the tomb, perform the ritual, and leave. I wasn't expecting anything supernatural, just a story to tell. But as we prepared, I couldn't shake the memory of the old woman's warning, her eyes boring into mine. "You don't choose Marie," she'd said. "She chooses you." I pushed the thought away, chalking it up to my imagination. The night before our cemetery visit, I lay awake in my hotel room, the sounds of New Orleans drifting through the open window. A distant drumbeat seemed to sync with my pulse, and for a moment, I thought I heard a faint whistle on the breeze. I sat up, heart racing, but the sound vanished. It was just the city, I told myself, alive with its own rhythm. Still, sleep didn't come easily that night, and my dreams were filled with images of a woman in a white dress, her face obscured by shadow. The next day, I buried myself in research to distract from the unease. I read about Marie's life, her power as a priestess, her influence over the city, and the legends of her immortality. Some claimed she'd made a pact with spirits, becoming a Loa, a voodoo deity. It was all fascinating but felt distant, academic. I was determined to stay grounded, to approach the ritual as an observer, not a believer. Yet as dusk fell, a strange anticipation gripped me. As we set out for the cemetery, the city seemed to watch us. The streetlights flickered, and the air grew humid, clinging to my skin like a second layer. Claire joked about summoning ghosts, but Marcus was quiet, his eyes darting to every shadow. I clutched the chalk in my pocket, feeling its weight like a talisman. The warnings echoed in my mind, but I dismissed them. This was just a cultural experience, nothing more. Or so I thought. By the time we reached the cemetery gates, the moon hung low, casting eerie shadows over the crumbling tombs. The air was still, almost suffocating, and the silence felt alive, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I told myself I was ready, but deep down, a part of me wondered if I was crossing a line I didn't fully understand. The gates of St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 creaked as we pushed them open, the sound echoing like a warning in the stillness. The cemetery was a labyrinth of weathered tombs, their whitewashed surfaces glowing faintly under the moonlight. Marie Laveau's tomb was easy to find, covered in faded X's, offerings of beads and wilted flowers left by countless visitors. I felt a mix of excitement and unease as I knelt before it, the chalk in my hand trembling slightly. This was it, the moment I'd connect with the history I'd been studying. Claire stood behind me, snapping photos with her phone, her laughter cutting through the heavy air. "This is so creepy cool," she said, zooming in on the tomb's cracked surface. Marcus, however, hovered near the path, his flashlight beam darting nervously. "Let's make this quick, Danielle," he muttered, his voice tight. I ignored him, focusing on the ritual. I drew 3 careful X's with the red chalk, the gritty texture scraping against the stone. Each mark felt heavier than the last, as if I were signing something binding. I placed the white flowers at the base of the tomb and poured a splash of rum onto the ground, reciting the words I'd read about. "Marie Laveau, grant me strength and knowledge." My voice sounded small in the vastness of the cemetery, swallowed by the silence. For a moment nothing happened. The air was still, the night unchanged. I stood, brushing the chalk dust from my hands, ready to laugh at the anticlimax. "See? Just a tourist thing," I said to Claire. But as we turned to leave, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew dense, like a storm was brewing, though the sky was clear. The faint scent of jasmine bloomed around us, unnatural and cloying. I glanced at Marcus, who was staring at the path behind us, his face pale. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I shook my head, but then I caught it, a soft whistle, low and melodic, coming from nowhere and everywhere. It wasn't the wind, there was no breeze. Claire froze, her camera forgotten. "Who's whistling?" she demanded, spinning around. The cemetery was empty, the tombs silent sentinels in the dark. But the sound grew closer, weaving through the air like a thread pulling us back. My heart pounded, and I told myself it was just a prank, maybe some local messing with tourists. But the whistle felt personal, like it was meant for me. We started walking faster, our footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The jasmine scent followed, growing stronger, almost suffocating. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone, a groundskeeper, a late-night wanderer, but there was nothing. Just the tombs, their shadows stretching like fingers across the ground. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Danielle, we shouldn't have done this," he said, his voice barely audible. The whistling stopped as suddenly as it began, leaving a silence that was somehow worse. We reached the cemetery gates and I fumbled with the latch, my hands shaking. As we stepped onto the street, the city's usual sounds, distant music, car horns, returned, but they felt muted, like we were still caught in some in-between place. I tried to laugh it off, telling Claire and Marcus it was just our imaginations running wild. Back at the hotel, we parted ways, but the unease lingered. I locked my door and sat on the bed, replaying the night in my mind. The ritual had been a lark, a way to feel closer to my research. But the whistle, the jasmine, the weight of the air, it all felt like something had noticed us. I opened my notebook, intending to write about the experience, but my pen hovered over the page. The words wouldn't come. That night, I dreamed of the cemetery. In the dream, the X's on Marie's tomb glowed red, pulsing like a heartbeat. A figure stood beside it, her face hidden by a veil, her hands dripping with something dark. She didn't speak, but her presence filled me with dread. I woke with a start, my chest tight, and for a moment I thought I smelled jasmine in the room. It was gone when I turned on the light, but sleep didn't come again that night. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd opened a door I didn't know how to close. The ritual, so simple and academic in my mind, had left a mark, not just on the tomb but on me. The morning after the cemetery, I woke feeling off, like a shadow had settled over me. The hotel room was bright with sunlight streaming through the curtains, but the air felt heavy, as if the night's events had followed me back. I checked my phone, expecting messages from Claire or Marcus, but there was nothing. Just silence. I tried to focus on my thesis, typing notes about voodoo rituals, but my mind kept drifting to the whistle, the jasmine, the weight of Marie's tomb. When I opened my door to head out for coffee, I froze. Hanging from the doorknob was a small doll, no bigger than my hand, made of coarse fabric. Its eyes were two sewing needles, glinting in the hallway light, and its mouth was stitched shut with red thread. My stomach churned. I'd read about voodoo dolls, but this felt personal and malicious. I looked up and down the hall, but it was empty, the other doors closed. I called the hotel manager, a wiry man named Louis with a thick Creole accent. He examined the doll, his face unreadable. "No one's been up here," he said firmly. "The night staff would have seen something." I pressed him, asking about security cameras, but he shook his head. "This old place don't have those." "You sure you didn't bring it yourself?" His tone wasn't accusatory, but his eyes held a flicker of something. Fear, maybe, or recognition. I kept the doll, wrapping it in a scarf and tucking it into my suitcase. I didn't know why. Throwing it away felt like admitting it meant something. Claire and Marcus met me for lunch and I showed them the doll. Claire laughed, calling it a prank, but Marcus was quiet, his fingers tracing the stitches. "This isn't funny," he said softly. "We need to be careful, Danielle." I brushed it off, but his words stuck with me. That afternoon, I tried to lose myself in the French Quarter's bustle, visiting shops and interviewing a voodoo priestess for my thesis. She spoke of Marie Laveau with reverence, calling her a Loa who bridged the living and the dead. When I mentioned the cemetery visit, her face darkened. "You marked her tomb?" she asked, her voice sharp. I nodded and she leaned closer. "You invited her in, child. Be ready for what comes next." Her words sent a chill through me, but I told myself it was just more folklore. Back at the hotel, I couldn't relax. The doll seemed to watch me from the suitcase, its needle eyes catching the light. I moved it to a drawer out of sight, but the room felt smaller, the walls closer. I called Claire to see if she wanted to grab dinner, but she didn't answer. Marcus texted saying he was staying in, feeling sick. Alone, I ordered room service and tried to focus on my notes, but the words blurred together. That night the dream came. I was in my hotel room, but it wasn't my room, not really. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air smelled of jasmine and earth. A woman stood in the center, her long dress flowing like liquid shadow. Her eyes glowed golden, piercing through me. She didn't speak, just raised a finger and pointed. The air grew heavy, pressing me into the bed, and I felt a sharp pain across my chest. I woke gasping, my hands flying to my chest. In the dim light, I saw them, 3 shallow scratches, red and raw, forming an X across my skin. My heart pounded as I stumbled to the mirror, expecting to see my own reflection. For a split second I thought I saw her, Marie, her golden eyes staring back. I blinked and it was just me, pale and shaken. The scratches were real though, and they burned. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the bed, the doll's presence looming in the drawer, the scratches throbbing with every heartbeat. The city outside was alive with music, but in room 206, it felt like I was trapped in a different New Orleans. One where the past wasn't just history but a living, breathing force. By morning I knew I needed help. Whatever I'd done at the tomb had set something in motion, something I didn't understand. I had to find a way to undo it before it went any further. Desperate for answers, I sought out a Houngan, a voodoo priest, recommended by the priestess I'd met. His name was Papa Jean, and he lived in a small house on the edge of the city, its walls covered in vines and charms. When I arrived, he was waiting on the porch, his eyes sharp and knowing, as if he'd expected me. I told him everything, the cemetery, the X's, the doll, the scratches. His face grew grim and he lit a cigar, the smoke curling around him like a protective veil. "You've called on a Loa," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Marie Laveau ain't just a spirit. She's a force, a power that don't take kindly to being summoned without respect." He studied the scratches on my chest, his fingers hovering over them without touching. "This is her mark. You've got her attention, and that's a dangerous thing." My stomach twisted as he spoke, his words confirming the dread I'd been trying to ignore. Papa Jean told me I needed to perform a purification ritual at Marie's old home on Rue de Maine, where she'd once conducted her secret voodoo practices. "You've opened a door," he said. "You gotta close it or she'll pull you through." He gave me a list of items to bring: white candles, salt, a silver coin, and a chant to recite. His instructions were precise, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "Do it tonight," he said. "Don't wait." I spent the day preparing, my hands shaking as I gathered the supplies. The city felt different now, its vibrancy overshadowed by something darker. Every glance in a window, every shadow on the street made me jump. Claire and Marcus wanted to come, but Papa Jean had been clear. I had to face this alone. I didn't tell them about the scratches or the dream, afraid they'd think I was losing it. Maybe I was. As night fell, I made my way to Rue de Maine. The street was quiet, the old house unassuming, its faded shutters and peeling paint blending into the night. I stepped inside, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of herbs. The floorboards creaked under my weight and I felt a chill like the house was watching me. I set up the ritual items in the center of the room, my hands clumsy with nerves. I lit the candles, their flames flickering in the still air. As I sprinkled salt in a circle around me, the silence broke. A low, rhythmic chanting began, soft at first, then growing louder. Amba do. Ambata, isi Marie Kap Mache. The words were Creole, their meaning clear even to me. Underwater, under earth. Marie is walking. There was no one else in the house, no source for the sound, yet it filled the space, wrapping around me like a net. My voice trembled as I began the purification chant, clutching the silver coin like a lifeline. The candles flared, their light casting strange shadows on the walls, shapes that seemed to move, to dance. The chanting grew louder, more insistent, and I felt a pressure in my chest like something was trying to claw its way out. I forced myself to keep going, reciting the words Papa Jean had taught me, even as the air grew colder. Then the candles went out. All at once, their flames snuffed as if by an unseen breath. The darkness was absolute, and the chanting stopped, replaced by a silence so deep it hurt my ears. I fumbled for my lighter, my hands shaking, but before I could light it, I saw her. A tall shadow in the corner, her hair trailing to the floor, her presence filling the room with a weight I couldn't bear. She didn't move, but I felt her gaze, heavy and golden, boring into me. The air smelled of jasmine again, mixed with something metallic, like blood. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body wouldn't obey. The ritual wasn't working. It was making things worse. I was alone in that house, but I wasn't. Marie was there and she was waiting. The shadow in the corner spoke, her voice low and resonant, cutting through the darkness. You called me, now you're mine. The words weren't just sound, they vibrated in my bones, pulling at something deep inside me. I tried to move, to break free of the paralysis gripping me, but my limbs felt like they belonged to someone else. The air in the room thickened, swirling like a vortex, and I saw it, blood dripping from the ceiling, slow and deliberate, pooling on the floor. The walls began to shift, their outlines warping as if the house itself was alive. Symbols appeared, carved into the wood, glowing faintly red like the X's on Marie's tomb. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped, my throat tight. The shadow moved closer, her form more distinct now, a woman in a long dress, her hair a cascade of darkness, her eyes burning with that unnatural golden light. She didn't touch me, but I felt her presence pressing against my mind, my soul. I clutched the silver coin, my last tether to the ritual, and tried to recite the chant again. But the words came out wrong, twisted into something else, a language I didn't know but somehow understood. The blood on the floor began to move, forming patterns, circles and X's, mirroring the marks on my chest. The room spun faster and I felt myself being pulled, not out of my body but into something else, a void that was both empty and alive. The shadow, Marie, raised her hand and the air crackled with energy. I saw flashes of her life, her power, rituals under moonlight, crowds chanting her name, spirits bending to her will. But there was something else too, a hunger, a need that went beyond the mortal world. She wasn't just a Loa, she was a force that consumed, that claimed. And I'd given her an invitation. I don't know how long I was in that room, caught in that in-between place. Time felt liquid, slipping through my fingers. The chanting returned, louder now, a chorus of voices that weren't human. Ambadu, Ambata. The words pulsed in my blood and I felt myself slipping further, my sense of self fraying at the edges. I was Danielle, but I was also something else, something tied to her. Then a sharp pain in my hand snapped me back. The silver coin was burning hot, searing my palm. I dropped it and the room stilled. The blood vanished, the walls stopped moving and the shadow was gone. But the air was still heavy and I knew she hadn't left, not really. I stumbled out of the house, my legs weak, my vision blurred. The street was empty, the city silent, as if it had been waiting for me to emerge. I collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for air. My hand was red and blistered where the coin had burned me, and the scratches on my chest throbbed. I looked back at the house, half expecting to see her standing in the doorway, but it was just a dark, empty shell. I forced myself to my feet and ran, the sound of my own footsteps echoing like a drumbeat in the night. When I reached the hotel, I locked myself in my room and sat against the door, afraid to move. The doll was still in the drawer, its needle eyes glinting when I dared to look. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. I just waited, listening for the whistle, the chant, the sound of her voice. She was still with me, I knew it. And she wasn't done. Morning came, but it brought no relief. I called Papa Jean, my voice shaking as I told him what happened. He was silent for a long time before he spoke. "You didn't close the door," he said. "You widened it." He told me to stay put, that he'd come to me, but I could hear the fear in his voice. Whatever I'd done, it was beyond his power to fix. As I hung up, I felt it again, that pull, that sense of being watched. The room smelled faintly of jasmine, and in the mirror, my reflection flickered. For a moment, it wasn't my face looking back, but hers, golden eyes, cold smile, and a presence that promised I'd never be free. They found me the next morning on the floor of the Rue de Main house, though I don't remember how I got back there. My body was shaking, my eyes wide, my mouth moving in a language no one recognized. The locals who found me wouldn't come close. They called Papa Jean, who arrived with a group of practitioners. They carried me out, chanting prayers to keep whatever was inside me at bay. I could feel their fear, their urgency, but I was only half present, my mind caught in a fog of whispers and golden eyes. Back at the hotel, I tried to piece myself together. My notes, my thesis, my life as Danielle Rousseau felt like a distant memory, a story belonging to someone else. The scratches on my chest had deepened, now permanent scars in the shape of an X. My hand still burned from the coin, and the doll was gone, vanished from the drawer, though I hadn't touched it. Papa Jean visited, his face lined with worry. "She's claimed you," he said. "You're hers now, unless you find a way to break the bond." I couldn't stay in New Orleans. I packed my things and left, telling Claire and Marcus I was fine, just shaken. They didn't believe me, but they didn't push. On the plane home, I felt her presence, a weight in my chest that never left. The whistling followed me, faint but constant, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. At night, I dreamed of the cemetery, the tomb, the 3 red X's glowing in the dark. In every dream, Marie was there, her voice a whisper, "The knowledge you sought is yours. But the soul share is never free." Back home, I tried to return to normal life. I submitted my thesis, incomplete and rushed, avoiding any mention of the ritual or what followed. My professors praised it, but I could barely read the words. They felt like hers, not mine. I stopped going out, stopped answering calls. The whistling was always there, louder in the quiet moments, and the scent of jasmine would creep into my apartment without warning. The mirror became my enemy. Some days my reflection was mine, tired, haunted, but mine. Other days it was her. Her golden eyes stared back, her smile cold and knowing. Once I saw her hand reach through the glass, her fingers brushing my cheek. I screamed and smashed the mirror, but the shards reflected her face, multiplied 100 times. I stopped replacing mirrors after that. I tried other rituals, other priests, even other faiths, but nothing worked. Papa Jean's words echoed in my mind, "You widened the door." I'd invited her in, and now she was part of me, a passenger in my soul. I could feel her thoughts sometimes, her will pushing against mine. She didn't want to control me, not yet. She was waiting, biding her time. I started speaking in that strange language again, in moments when I wasn't myself. My neighbors complained of chanting coming from my apartment at night, but I lived alone. I found X's drawn in red chalk on my walls, my floors, my skin, though I never touched the chalk. The doll reappeared one day, sitting on my kitchen table, its needle eyes watching me. I burned it, but the next morning it was back, unscorched. Every night the dreams grew stronger. Marie showed me things, rituals, secrets, powers I'd never imagined. The knowledge was intoxicating, but it came with a price. I could feel myself slipping, my identity eroding like a sandcastle under the tide. I was Danielle, but I was also hers, a vessel for something ancient and unstoppable. I don't know how much time I have left. The whistling is louder now, a constant hum in my ears. The jasmine scent follows me everywhere, and the X's appear without warning. I'm writing this down, hoping it will anchor me, keep me Danielle for a little longer. But I know the truth. I called her and she answered. And now I'm hers. My name is still Danielle Rousseau. But the part of me that's me is fading, and soon I fear, there will only be her, Marie Laveau, walking through me, her golden eyes seeing the world anew. The night at Rue de Main left a fracture in my soul, a crack through which something else seeped in. I woke each morning with a strange thirst, not for water, but for the scent of incense and the pulse of distant drums. The rhythm haunted me, a voodoo beat that echoed in my skull, relentless and unyielding. It wasn't just in my head. My fingers moved of their own accord, tracing unfamiliar symbols on fogged windows or the wooden surface of my desk. They were intricate, spiraling patterns like the ones I'd seen in voodoo texts, but I had no memory of learning them. My apartment, once a sanctuary, felt foreign now. The air was heavy, thick with the faint scent of jasmine and earth, even with the windows sealed shut. I tried to focus on my thesis, to anchor myself in academia, but my notes were a mess. Pages I didn't recall writing were filled with cramped, jagged script in a language I couldn't read. When I showed them to my advisor, Dr. Hargrove, his brow furrowed. "Is this Creole Kuno?" he asked, peering over his glasses. I stared at the words, my heart racing. I didn't know, but they felt alive, like they were watching me. Sleep became a battleground. Every night, I dreamed of a woman in a flowing dress, her face hidden by shadow, standing in a circle of candles. She didn't speak, but her presence pressed against my mind, heavy and inescapable. I'd wake with my hands smudged with chalk dust, though I kept no chalk in the house. Once I found a single red X drawn on my bedroom wall, its lines uneven as if drawn in a trance. I scrubbed it off, but the next morning it was back, larger and bolder. The city outside my apartment seemed to change with me. The streets of New Orleans, once vibrant and welcoming, now felt like a maze designed to trap me. People stared as I passed, their eyes lingering too long as if they saw something I didn't. A street vendor, selling gree-gree bags, grabbed my wrist one day and whispered, "You carry her mark, cher." I pulled away, my skin crawling, but her words stayed with me. I began avoiding crowds, sticking to quiet alleys where the drumbeat in my head was the only sound. My friends noticed the change. Claire called, her voice hesitant, asking why I'd stopped meeting them for coffee. I lied, saying I was swamped with work, but the truth was I couldn't face her. Not after what we'd done at the cemetery. Marcus texted less and less, his messages curt, as if he sensed the shadow hanging over me. I wanted to tell them about the symbols, the dreams, the thirst, but the words stuck in my throat like they belonged to someone else. I tried to ground myself in routine. I'd sit at my desk, forcing myself to type, but my fingers betrayed me, scrawling strange phrases instead of thesis notes. Ambadillo, ambata, I wrote over and over, the words looping across the page. I looked them up, Creole for underwater, under earth. They were from the chant at Rue de Maine, the one that had surrounded me in that dark house. I tore the pages out, but they reappeared in my notebook the next day as if mocking me. The thirst grew worse, a gnawing need that no drink could satisfy. I found myself wandering to spiritual shops, drawn to the smell of burning herbs and the clatter of beads. I bought candles, oils, anything that felt right, though I didn't know why. At night, I'd light them, hoping to calm the rhythm in my head, but the flames only seemed to call her closer. Her presence was a weight, a shadow that moved with me, growing stronger with each passing day. I stopped answering my phone, letting voicemails pile up. My advisor left messages, concerned about my missed deadlines. My mother called, her voice trembling, asking why I sounded so distant. I couldn't tell her that part of me was slipping away, that something else was filling the space where Danielle used to be. The symbols on my windows grew more complex, covering every pane, and I stopped cleaning them. They felt like a language I was meant to understand. One night, I woke to find myself standing in the kitchen, a knife in my hand, carving an X into the countertop. My reflection in the blade wasn't mine. Her golden eyes stared back, calm and commanding. I dropped the knife, my hands shaking, and ran to the bathroom to splash water on my face. But the water smelled of jasmine, and the rhythm in my head grew louder, a drumbeat that promised I'd never be free. By the end of the week, I knew I was losing myself. The thirst, the symbols, the dreams, they were all her, pulling me deeper into her world. I was still Danielle, but only just. And every night, as I lay in the dark, I felt her presence growing, waiting for the moment I'd surrender completely. The mirrors in my apartment became portals to something I couldn't understand. Every time I looked into one, I saw a flicker of something wrong. A smile that wasn't mine, eyes that glowed faintly golden. It started in the bathroom, where I'd catch my reflection lingering a second too long after I turned away. At first, I thought it was exhaustion, my mind playing tricks after sleepless nights. But the smile grew wider, more deliberate, as if it knew I was watching. One evening, I stood brushing my teeth, avoiding the mirror's gaze. But I felt it, her presence, cold and heavy like a hand on my shoulder. I looked up, and there she was, not in my reflection but behind me, a tall figure in a flowing dress, her hair cascading like a dark river. Her golden eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. I spun around, heart pounding, but the bathroom was empty, the door still locked. My toothbrush lay in the sink, snapped in half. I covered the mirrors with sheets, hoping to block her out, but it didn't help. At night, I'd hear whispers from behind the fabric, soft and melodic, in a language that tugged at my memory. Moi la toujours, they said, Creole for I am still here. I tore the sheets down, desperate to confront whatever was happening, but my reflection only smirked, her lips moving while mine stayed still. I stopped using the bathroom mirror altogether, brushing my teeth in the kitchen sink. The phenomenon spread. Every reflective surface, windows, polished silverware, even the screen of my phone, showed glimpses of her. One night, I caught her face in the glass of a framed photo superimposed over my own. I smashed the frame, but the shards reflected her eyes, multiplied and gleaming. I swept them up, my hands bleeding, but the next morning the photo was whole again, her face staring out from behind the glass. I tried to document it, setting up my phone to record while I slept. The footage showed nothing, just me tossing in bed, muttering in a language I didn't know. But when I played it back, the audio was overlaid with a faint whistle, the same one from the cemetery. I deleted the video, my hands shaking, but the file reappeared on my phone the next day, unopened but waiting. The writing started soon after. I'd wake to find words scrawled on my walls, my notebooks, even my skin. Moi là toujours, they read, the letters jagged and uneven as if written in a hurry. I scrubbed them off, but they'd reappear, sometimes in new places, on the fridge, the ceiling, the inside of my eyelids when I closed my eyes. I stopped sleeping with the lights off, afraid of what I'd find in the dark. I called Papa Jean, the houngan who'd tried to help me before. His voice was strained as if he'd expected my call. She's binding herself to you, he said. The mirrors are her windows. You need to break the connection before she takes more. He told me to burn sage and recite a prayer, but when I tried, the sage wouldn't light, and the words twisted into her chant instead. The air filled with jasmine, and I felt her laughter in my bones. I stopped leaving the apartment, afraid of what I'd see in shop windows or car mirrors. But staying inside was worse. The reflections followed me, her face appearing in every surface, her smile growing sharper. One night, I woke to find myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, my hand raised, writing her words in red lipstick I didn't own. The mirror cracked under my touch, but her reflection didn't flinch. I tried to fight it, to reclaim myself. I covered every reflective surface with paint, taped newspaper over the windows, and threw out anything that shone. But it didn't matter. She was inside me now, her presence a constant hum, her voice whispering in my thoughts. I'd catch myself humming her chant, my fingers tracing X's without my consent. By the end of the month, I was a stranger in my own skin. The mirrors showed her more than they showed me, and the words on the walls were no longer just hers. They were mine, written in a hand I didn't recognize. I was still Danielle, but she was winning, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. Claire's collapse shattered what little hope I had left. She'd been fine, or so I thought, still joking about our cemetery adventure despite my withdrawal. Then one morning Marcus called, his voice shaking. Claire had been found unconscious in her apartment, her mouth caked with mud, her hair falling out in clumps. Under her pillow was a voodoo doll, its face stitched with her own blonde strands, its eyes two black beads that seemed to watch me when Marcus showed it to me. I visited her in the hospital, my heart heavy with guilt. Claire lay still, her eyes open but empty, like a doll herself. The doctors couldn't explain it. No drugs, no trauma, just a sudden, inexplicable coma. I held her hand, whispering apologies, but her fingers were cold, unresponsive. The doll was still in her room, tucked into a plastic bag by the police, and I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. It was my fault. We'd gone to the cemetery together, but I'd drawn the X's, I'd called her name. Marcus was a wreck, blaming himself for not stopping us that night. We shouldn't have gone, he kept saying, his eyes red. I wanted to tell him about the mirrors, the writing, the presence in my head, but I couldn't. He'd think I was crazy, or worse, he'd see the truth, that I'd brought this on us all. I left the hospital with the doll's image burned into my mind, its stitched mouth mirroring the one from my hotel room. Back home, I searched my apartment for the doll that had appeared in room 206. It was gone, vanished from the drawer where I'd hidden it. But the next day, I found it on my kitchen table, its needle eyes glinting, a fresh X carved into its chest. I burned it in the sink, watching the flames consume it, but the smoke smelled of jasmine, and the fire didn't feel like mine. The next morning, the doll was back, untouched, sitting on my pillow. I called Papa Jean again, begging for answers. He came to my apartment, his face grim as he examined the doll. "This is her work," he said, his voice low. "She's tying you all to her, but you're the anchor." He told me Claire's condition was a warning, a sign of what could happen if I didn't act. "She's not just a Loa," he said. "She's claiming you piece by piece." His words chilled me, but I didn't know how to fight something I couldn't see. The dreams grew worse. I saw Claire in them, her body sinking into a swamp, mud filling her mouth as Marie stood over her, smiling. I saw myself too, my reflection splitting into two, me and her, our faces merging until I couldn't tell us apart. I woke screaming, my hands clutching my chest, where the X-shaped scars burned like fresh wounds. The doll was always there when I woke, its presence a reminder of my failure. I tried to reach Marcus to warn him, but he stopped answering my calls. I went to his apartment, but it was empty, the door ajar, a faint smell of jasmine lingering in the air. On his coffee table was a single red X, drawn in what looked like blood. I ran, my heart pounding, knowing he was gone, taken by whatever I'd unleashed. I was alone now, the last one standing, and she was coming for me. The doll began to change. Its stitches loosened, revealing a mouth that seemed to whisper when I wasn't looking. I found it in different places, my fridge, my bed, the bathtub, always with a new mark, a new X. I stopped trying to destroy it, it always returned, stronger, more alive. One night, I woke to find it in my hand, my fingers tracing its stitches, my voice chanting her words. I knew I couldn't stay in New Orleans. The city was hers and I was losing myself to it. I packed a bag intending to leave, but every time I reached the door, the thirst returned, the drums pounded, and my feet refused to move. I was trapped, not by walls but by her, her presence woven into my blood, my bones, my soul. By the time I realized I needed help, it was almost too late. The doll was no longer just a doll, it was a piece of her, a piece of me. Anne Claire, lying in that hospital bed, was a warning of what I'd become if I didn't find a way out. In desperation, I sought out Mama Celeste, a mambo known for her connection to the light side of voodoo. Her shop was a small, cluttered space in Treem, filled with candles, herbs, and statues of saints. She was old, her face lined with wisdom and weariness, but her eyes were sharp, cutting through me as I told her my story. She listened without interrupting, her fingers tracing a bead necklace, her silence more unnerving than any words. "You've opened a path," she said finally, her voice low and steady. "Marie Laveau has chosen you as a vessel. You're not possessed, not yet. You're being transformed." Her words hit like a blow, confirming my worst fears. She explained that some Loa, powerful spirits like Marie, needed a living body to fully return to the world. I'd invited her in with the ritual at the cemetery, and now she was reshaping me, claiming me as her own. Mama Celeste agreed to help, but her tone was grim. "This won't be easy," she warned. "She's strong and she don't let go easy." She told me to prepare for a journey to the Bayou St. John, a place tied to Marie's early rituals. I'd need to perform a counter-ritual to weaken her hold, but it would require sacrifice, blood, will, and maybe part of myself. I nodded, too scared to ask what she meant, knowing I had no choice. I spent the day gathering the items she listed: black eggs from a local market, a bottle of dark rum, cornbread baked with honey, and a small vial for my blood. The act of pricking my finger to fill it felt wrong, like I was giving her more of me, but Mama Celeste insisted. "Blood is power," she said. "It's the only way to speak to her." I felt the drums in my head grow louder as I prepared, as if she knew what I was planning. The bayou was a world apart from the city, its waters dark and still, its air thick with the hum of insects. Mama Celeste met me there at dusk, her robes white and flowing, a stark contrast to the swamp's shadows. She set up an altar on the bank, arranging the offerings in a precise pattern. The drums began, played by two of her assistants, their rhythms syncing with the one in my head. I felt her presence before the ritual even started, her golden eyes watching from the darkness. As the moon rose, Mama Celeste began the chant, her voice strong and clear, calling on the Loa to witness. I felt a pull like a hook in my chest and my vision blurred. The air grew heavy, the scent of jasmine overwhelming. I saw her then, Marie standing across the fire, her dress shimmering black and gold, her smile both welcoming and predatory. She didn't speak, but her presence was a command, a claim on my soul. The ritual intensified. Mama Celeste poured the rum over the altar, the flames flaring high. I felt my body heat up, my stomach churning as if something inside me was fighting to get out. I saw flashes, images of Marie's life, her rituals, her power over life and death. But there was cruelty too, a darkness that fed on pain. I screamed, my body bending backward, the pain unbearable. Her voice came then clear and calm. "You sought me. Now I live in you." I don't know how long the ritual lasted. Time dissolved, the world reduced to fire, drums, and her eyes. Mama Celeste's voice grew hoarse, her chants faltering as the Loa's presence grew stronger. I felt myself slipping, my identity fraying like a worn thread. The blood I'd offered seemed to burn in my veins, tying me to her even as I fought to break free. When it was over, I was on the ground, my clothes soaked with sweat and mud. Mama Celeste looked exhausted, her assistance pale. "We've weakened her hold," she said, but her eyes told me it wasn't enough. Marie was still there, her presence a shadow in my mind, her smile lingering in my vision. I'd fought her, but I hadn't won. As we left the bayou, the drums in my head faded, but they didn't stop. I knew she was still with me, biding her time. And I knew deep down that the ritual hadn't freed me, it had only delayed the inevitable. The bayou ritual left me shaken, but Mama Celeste wasn't done. She insisted on a second ritual, one to sever the connection completely. "The first one was to weaken her," she said. "This one is to close the door." We returned to the bayou the next night, the air colder now, the moon hidden behind clouds. The altar was larger this time, adorned with white cloth, candles and a small mirror, its surface covered to keep her out. Mama Celeste's assistants were fewer, their faces tense. They'd seen what happened the night before, felt her power. The offerings were different too, a live chicken, its feathers black, a bowl of salt and more of my blood, drawn fresh. I winced as the needle pierced my skin, the vial filling slowly. The drums began again, their rhythm slower, heavier, like a funeral march. I felt her before we started, her presence a pressure in my chest, her laughter echoing in my mind. The chant was different this time, sharper, more urgent. Mama Celeste's voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before, as if she was pleading with the Loa. The air grew thick, the scent of jasmine mixing with blood and smoke. I held the mirror, its cover removed, and saw her face instantly, golden eyes, sharp smile, her hair flowing like a storm. I wanted to drop it, but Mama Celeste's hand on mine kept it steady. "Look at her," she commanded. "Face her." The flames roared, the chicken's throat was cut, and its blood mixed with mine on the altar. I felt a surge of pain like my soul was being torn in two. Marie's voice came again, louder now. "You can't send me back. You're mine." I saw her life again. Rituals, power, cruelty, but this time I saw myself in her place, my hands performing her spells, my voice chanting her words. The line between us blurred and I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Mama Celeste poured salt in a circle around me, her chants growing frantic. The mirror cracked in my hands, but her face didn't vanish. She stepped out of it, not a reflection but a presence, standing in the firelight. Her dress was alive, moving like liquid shadow, and her eyes burned into mine. I screamed, my body convulsing, but Mama Celeste held me down, her hands strong despite her age. "Fight her," she shouted, but I was slipping, my will crumbling under her gaze. The ritual reached its peak, the drums deafening, the air electric. I felt a pull like my soul was being sucked into the mirror, into her. But then Mama Celeste threw the bowl of salt into the fire, and the flames exploded, blinding me. Marie's presence faltered, her voice fading to a whisper. I collapsed, gasping, the mirror shattered at my feet. The drums stopped and the night was silent, but I knew she wasn't gone. Mama Celeste helped me up, her face pale. "We closed the door," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "But she's still in you, child. You'll carry her always." I looked at the scars on my chest, the X's that hadn't faded, and knew she was right. The ritual had bought me time but not freedom. Marie was patient and she was waiting. I left the bayou, my body weak, my mind fractured. The drums were quieter now, but they were still there, a faint pulse in my blood. The jasmine scent followed me, a reminder of her claim. I tried to believe I'd won, that I was still Danielle, but every step felt heavier, as if she was walking with me. Back in the city, I avoided mirrors, reflections, anything that could show her face. But I felt her in my thoughts, my dreams, my every breath. The ritual had changed something, but not enough. I was still hers and she was still waiting. As I lay in bed that night, the mirror in my room uncovered, I saw her again, not in the glass but in my mind. Her smile was softer now, almost kind, but her words were a promise. "You'll see me again, when the time comes." Mama Celeste sat me down the next day, her shop dim and quiet, the air thick with the scent of herbs. She looked older, her hands trembling slightly as she poured tea. "You have two paths," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Let Marie take you fully, and you'll live forever as her vessel, a bridge to the spirit world. Or close the path for good and lose part of yourself, memories maybe more, and carry her scars forever." Her words hung heavy, each one a weight on my soul. I didn't want to choose, but I couldn't keep living like this, half myself, half her. The first option terrified me, becoming her, losing Danielle completely, living as a shadow of a Loa. But the second was no better. Losing memories, pieces of my life, and carrying her mark forever felt like a different kind of surrender. I asked Mama Celeste if there was another way, but she shook her head. She's too deep in you now, she said. This is all you have. I chose the second path, hoping to reclaim some part of myself. Mama Celeste prepared the final ritual, a smaller one, to be done in her shop. The altar was simple, just a candle, a bowl of water, and a single X drawn in ash. She cut a lock of my hair, burned it, and mixed the ashes with my blood. The air grew cold, and I felt her immediately, Marie watching, her presence a storm in my mind. The drums in my head started again, louder than ever. The ritual began with a single chant, Mama Celeste's voice soft but firm. I felt it tearing inside me like my soul was being ripped apart. Marie appeared in my mind, her golden eyes blazing, her smile sharp. You can't escape me, she said, her voice echoing in my bones. I saw flashes of her life again, rituals, power, blood, but this time I saw my own face, my hands, my voice, all hers. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the chant. Mama Celeste poured the water over the altar, the candle flame hissing but not dying. The pain intensified, my vision blurring as memories slipped away. My childhood, my first day at college, my mother's face. I fought to hold on to them, but they dissolved like smoke, replaced by her laughter, her power. The X on my chest burned, and I felt her fighting to stay, her will stronger than mine. Then suddenly it stopped. The drums fell silent, the pain eased, and Marie's presence faded to a whisper. Mama Celeste was kneeling beside me, her face wet with tears. It's done, she said, but her voice was hollow. I looked at the altar, the candle still burning, the X and ash now smeared. I felt empty, like part of me was gone, but I was still here, still Danielle, at least I hoped so. She spoke again, her voice soft. You'll see me again, when the time comes. Her words lingered, a promise or a threat, I couldn't tell. I left the shop, my legs weak, my mind foggy. The scars on my chest were still there, a permanent reminder of her claim. I didn't know what I'd lost, memories, pieces of my soul, but I felt their absence, a hole where something used to be. I tried to return to my life, but it wasn't the same. The drums were gone, the thirst faded, but the jasmine scent lingered, faint but constant. I avoided mirrors, afraid of what I'd see, but sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her, a flicker in a window, a shadow in my peripheral vision. She was still there, waiting, biding her time. Mama Celeste warned me to stay vigilant, to never perform another ritual, to never call on the Loa again. She's patient, she said. And she never forgets. I nodded, but I knew it wasn't over. Marie had let me go for now, but she hadn't released me. I was marked, scarred, hers in a way I'd never escape. As I walked away from the shop, the city felt different, quieter but not safe. The air was heavy with her presence, and I knew deep down that she was only waiting for the right moment to return. 3 months have passed since the final ritual, and I'm back at my university trying to rebuild my life. But I'm not the Danielle I was. My thesis is done, submitted with gaps I can't explain, but my professors don't ask questions. They look at me strangely though, as if they see something I don't. My classmates too. Some call me Madame Laveau in the halls, half joking, half afraid. I laugh it off, but it chills me the way their eyes follow me. Claire is still in the hospital, unchanged, her eyes empty, her body a shell. I visit her when I can, sitting by her bed, whispering apologies she can't hear. The doctors say there's no hope, but I can't let go. I see her in my dreams sometimes, sinking into mud, Marie standing over her. I don't know where Marcus is, his apartment is empty, his phone disconnected. I'm alone now, carrying the weight of what we did. The drums are gone, but the silence is worse. I wake some mornings with my hands covered in dirt, my nails caked with it, though I haven't left my bed. I find X's drawn in my notebooks, on my walls, in the dust on my windows. I don't draw them, but they appear, a reminder of her presence. The jasmine scent follows me, faint but constant, like a shadow I can't shake. Animals react to me now. Stray cats hiss and run, dogs bark as I pass. Once, a crow followed me for blocks, its eyes locked on mine, cawing until I hid in a coffee shop. People notice too, strangers stare, some cross the street to avoid me. I don't blame them. I feel her in me, a piece of her that the ritual didn't remove, a seed waiting to grow. I avoid mirrors, but I can't escape them entirely. In store windows, car doors, even puddles, I see her, golden eyes, sharp smile, her face blending with mine. Sometimes I catch myself speaking in her voice, low and commanding, saying words I don't understand. My roommate moved out last week, saying she heard chanting at night, though I live alone now. I've tried to move on, to focus on classes, on normalcy, but it's a lie. My memories are patchy, whole years missing, replaced by flashes of her life. Rituals, power, blood. I don't know what's mine anymore, what's hers. I keep a journal, writing down everything to hold on to myself, but the pages fill with her words, her symbols, her X's. The doll reappeared last week, sitting on my desk, its needle eyes watching. I didn't burn it this time. I locked it in a box, but I can hear it at night, scratching, whispering. I don't open the box, but I know it's there, a piece of her waiting for me to weaken. I'm stronger now, or I tell myself I am, but I feel her in every breath, every heartbeat. I don't know how much time I have. The ritual bought me freedom, but it's fragile, a thread that could snap at any moment. I feel her waiting, patient and certain, her presence a constant hum in my soul. I'm still Danielle, but I'm also hers, and I know she's coming back. Every night, I check the locks, light a candle, say a prayer Mama Celeste taught me. But it doesn't help. The jasmine scent grows stronger, the X's multiply, and her voice whispers in my dreams, "When the time comes, share, you'll be mine." I don't know when that time will be, but I feel it approaching, a shadow growing closer with every day. My name is Danielle Rousseau, but I'm not sure how much longer that will be true. She's still here, in the mirrors, in the dirt under my nails, in the rhythm of my blood. And she's waiting for the moment I'm hers completely. If you love this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss our dark, spine-tingling horror stories from every corner of the globe.